Protecting your peace like a sacred space begins with understanding that your inner world is not an open marketplace for anyone's emotions, judgments, or chaos. It is a place that belongs solely to you, a sanctuary that must be guarded with the same seriousness you reserve for your physical safety. Too often, we hand out access to our inner calm without realizing its value. We let people enter with muddy shoes, carrying their frustrations, insecurities, and unresolved conflicts, and we absorb them as if they are ours. But your peace is not a public space, it is a sacred ground. The moment you recognize its worth, you begin to treat it differently. You begin to choose differently. You begin to respond differently. People may walk into your life with storms raging inside them, attempting, consciously or unconsciously, to pull you into their turbulence. Some will challenge your calm because they have never tasted peace themselves. Some will provoke reactions simply to validate their own inner chaos. But this is where your discipline comes in. You cannot always control who appears in your life, but you can decide who gets to stay in your mind. You can choose who gets close, who remains at the gate, and who has no access at all. By setting this internal boundary, you declare to yourself and to the world that your peace is priceless. To protect your peace, you must also be mindful of the energy you allow to influence you. Words, attitudes, expressions, they all carry weight. And if you allow these energies to settle inside you, you will find yourself carrying burdens that are not yours. When someone speaks with bitterness, it doesn't mean you must swallow their bitterness. When someone expresses anger, it doesn't mean you must carry their anger. The key is awareness. The moment you feel a shift inside you, pause, observe, identify whether the feeling belongs to you or to someone else. This simple recognition alone can save you from emotional overload. Creating this inner sacredness requires consistent practice. It may mean stepping away from conversations that disturb your calm. It may mean limiting your exposure to certain people, even if they are close to you. It may mean spending more time with yourself, strengthening your mind until peace becomes your natural state rather than something you have to chase. Protection is not always a loud act. Sometimes it is a quiet refusal, a steady breath, a gentle but firm no, a subtle shift in your distance. These small actions build an invisible wall that toxic energy cannot cross. And most importantly, you protect your peace by knowing who you are. When you are rooted deeply within yourself, your values, your purpose, your truth, no outside negativity can pull you off balance. You become unshakable not because life becomes easier, but because you become stronger, clearer, more intentional. When your inner world is treated as sacred, everything in your outer world begins to align with that sacredness. Practicing the power of non-reaction is one of the most transformative skills you can develop when protecting your inner peace from toxic people. It is not an act of weakness, but an act of mastery, an inner discipline that allows you to stay rooted in who you are rather than getting swept away by the emotional storms of others. Most conflicts in life are not born from what people say or do, but from how we choose to respond. When you learn to pause instead of react, observe instead of absorb, and breathe instead of explode, you reclaim control over your emotional world. This is a kind of strength that cannot be shaken, because it comes from within, not from external conditions. Non-reaction is not the same as silence. It is awareness. It means you become conscious of the impulse that rises inside you, the urge to defend, the desire to argue, the pull to explain yourself, the temptation to match someone's negativity with your own. But instead of acting on that impulse, you choose to witness it. That simple act of witnessing creates a gap, a moment of clarity where you can decide whether engaging is truly worth your energy. And more often than not, it isn't. Toxic people thrive on reaction because it gives them a sense of power. When you stop feeding their need for drama, the cycle breaks. Learning not to react also means understanding that people's words reflect who they are, not who you are. Someone's anger does not define you. Someone's judgment does not limit your worth. Someone's negativity does not determine your emotional state. Their behavior is a projection of their own inner struggles. When you see this clearly, you no longer take things personally. You observe with detachment instead of absorbing with sensitivity. You become emotionally untouchable, not cold, but calm. Often, the greatest battles you will face are internal ones, the battle between old patterns and new awareness. Many are conditioned to react immediately, to fire back, to defend their ego, to correct misunderstandings. But non-reaction teaches you that not every situation needs your involvement. Not every insult needs an explanation. Not every criticism needs a counterattack. Your silence is not a surrender, it is a sign of self-respect. It shows that you value your peace more than winning an argument. When you practice non-reaction consistently, something powerful begins to happen. You start to feel lighter. You start to feel more in control. You start to realize that peace is not about avoiding challenges, but about mastering your response to them. The world around you may still be chaotic, but inside you, a calm space grows. This is where your true power lies. It is the solid ground beneath your feet, the quiet center that toxic people cannot disturb unless you let them. Over time, your ability to remain unmoved becomes your shield, your strength, your liberation. Strengthening your boundaries without apology begins with recognizing that protecting your mental and emotional space is not selfish. It is essential. Many people struggle with boundaries because they fear disappointing others or being seen as unkind. But what they fail to see is that a boundary is not a wall meant to keep the world out. It is a doorway that determines what kind of energy is allowed in. When you honor your boundaries, you honor your well-being. You tell yourself, my peace matters. And when you live from that truth, your life begins to shift. Toxic people often push against boundaries because they benefit from a version of you that does not defend itself. They prefer you exhausted, compliant, or unsure of yourself. This makes it easier for them to manipulate your emotions or drain your energy. But the moment you begin to set limits, clear, firm, and unapologetic, the dynamic changes. You reclaim power that was once scattered. You regain control over interactions that once overwhelmed you. You stand taller, not because you are aggressive, but because you are rooted in self-respect. Boundaries are not always spoken. Sometimes they are actions, walking away from a pointless argument, choosing not to answer a message that disrupts your peace, limiting your exposure to someone who repeats the same destructive patterns. Other times, boundaries require words, calm, direct, and honest communication that expresses what you will and will not tolerate. The key is consistency. A boundary set once and ignored the next day becomes meaningless. Toxic people pay attention not to what you say but to what you allow. When your actions and your limits align, people begin to understand that you are not someone whose peace can be casually disturbed. Setting boundaries also requires you to let go of guilt. Many were raised to put others first, to be agreeable, to keep the peace even at the cost of their own. But real peace cannot exist when you betray yourself to keep others comfortable. You are not responsible for how someone reacts to your boundaries. Their anger, their disappointment, or their resistance is not your burden to carry. Their reaction reveals their character. Your boundary reveals yours. When you stop apologizing for protecting your energy, you step into a deeper level of self-trust. With every boundary you set, you send a message to the world about the kind of life you are building. You are building a life where emotional stability is valued. You are building a life where respect is mutual. You are building a life where your inner world is not compromised for temporary approval or false harmony. Boundaries are expressions of clarity. Clarity about your needs, your values, and your limits. And the clearer you are, the less chaos you attract. Over time, these boundaries become part of who you are. They no longer feel like rules you must enforce, but like a natural extension of your identity. You become someone who chooses environments intentionally, relationships consciously, and interactions mindfully. And the people who remain in your life are those who respect your presence rather than exploit your kindness. Through boundaries, you reshape your world from the inside out, creating space for peace to thrive and for your spirit to expand without interference. Recognizing toxicity without absorbing it begins with understanding that people's negative behaviors are often symptoms of their own unresolved pain, not reflections of your worth. When someone speaks harshly, judges unfairly, or tries to undermine your confidence, it is easy to internalize their words and question yourself. But the moment you learn to see their behavior as a projection of their inner chaos, something shifts. You stop carrying emotional burdens that were never yours to hold. You stop mistaking their dysfunction for your responsibility. You begin to understand that what you witness in them is not a mirror, but a warning. Toxic people often operate from wounds they refuse to acknowledge. Instead of healing, they spread their hurt outward, using others as emotional dumping grounds. Their negativity is a coping mechanism, a shield, a disguise. But when you recognize that their attacks come from their inner instability, you gain the clarity to step back instead of stepping into their drama. You disengage emotionally while still observing objectively. This skill allows you to maintain compassion without sacrificing your peace, to understand without getting entangled, to perceive without being pulled into their emotional gravity. This clarity also requires emotional maturity. It means resisting the urge to take things personally, even when their words feel sharp. It means reminding yourself that their behavior did not originate with you. It simply found you. You become less reactive and more reflective, asking yourself, is this about me, or is it about them? In most cases, the answer becomes obvious. Their patterns repeat with everyone, not just you. Their conflicts follow them, not because the world is against them, but because they carry conflict within. When you see this, their attempts to unsettle you lose their power. Not absorbing toxicity also means understanding your emotional boundaries. Just because you hear something does not mean it must enter your heart. Just because someone tries to provoke you does not mean you must respond. You can witness negativity the way you watch a storm through a window, aware of its intensity, but untouched by its chaos. You do not need to stand outside and let the rain soak you. You can remain sheltered within your awareness, grounded in the truth that you are responsible only for the energy you bring, not the energy others try to impose upon you. This awareness becomes even stronger when you remind yourself of who you are, when your sense of self is stable, when you know your values, your intentions, your strengths. No toxic remark can shake you. You begin to trust your inner compass more than anyone's external judgment. You stop seeking validation from those who cannot even validate themselves. And in that moment, you gain emotional immunity. Their negativity may be loud, but it no longer enters you. It stays where it belongs with them. Over time, recognizing toxicity becomes effortless. You sense it not just through words, but through tone, energy patterns, and behavior. And instead of reacting, you adjust, you distance, you detach, not with anger, but with wisdom. Not with fear, but with clarity. This skill becomes a form of self-protection that allows you to move through life with a calm spirit even when surrounded by chaotic souls. Choosing your environment with intention means understanding that the spaces you enter and the people you surround yourself with shape your emotional well-being far more than you may realize. Energy is contagious, moods spread, habits influence. Whether you remain calm or become overwhelmed often depends on what surrounds you, not just what is within you. So when you consciously choose environments that uplift, support, and align with your values, you create a foundation where your inner peace can grow naturally. On the other hand, when you stay in environments polluted by negativity, criticism, or emotional instability, your peace becomes something you constantly fight for instead of something you naturally experience. Many people underestimate how much their surroundings influence them. They stay in draining conversations out of politeness, maintain connections that burden them out of habit, or tolerate environments that chip away at their mental health because they fear change. But the truth is, you cannot thrive in soil that refuses to nourish you. You cannot grow in spaces that suffocate your potential. And you cannot find peace in places where chaos is the dominant language. Choosing your environment intentionally means letting go of the belief that you must endure toxicity. You are not obligated to remain where you are diminished. Being intentional with your environment starts with knowing what you need. Some people need stillness, others need inspiration, and others need supportive community. When you take the time to understand what energizes you and what drains you, the decisions you make about your surroundings become clearer. You might realize that certain people always leave you feeling unsettled, while others bring clarity, comfort, or encouragement. You might notice that certain spaces trigger anxiety while others restore your balance. These observations are not judgments, they are guidance. They teach you how to position yourself where you function best. Sometimes choosing your environment means removing yourself from situations that have become too heavy to carry. It might be stepping away from a conversation filled with negativity. It might be reducing time with people who consistently disrespect your boundaries. It might be restructuring your daily routines to avoid constant stress and overwhelm. These changes may feel uncomfortable at first because they require courage, self-awareness, and detachment. But with each intentional choice, you reclaim a piece of your peace. Your environment also includes your internal space, your thoughts, your self-talk, the content you consume, the habits you cultivate. What you feed your mind becomes the atmosphere of your inner world. If you constantly expose yourself to chaos, conflict, or comparison, your inner environment becomes clouded. But when you surround yourself with uplifting ideas, calming practices, and supportive influences, your inner landscape becomes clear and focused. The outer world may not always be gentle, but your inner world can be. Intentionally choosing your environment is a daily practice, not a one-time decision. It is the awareness to ask yourself regularly, does this space support the person I am becoming? When the answer is no, you adjust, not with guilt, but with gratitude for the clarity. Because the more intentional you are about what surrounds you, the stronger your inner peace becomes, and the less susceptible you are to the energy that does not align with your growth. Anchoring yourself in self-awareness and calmness begins with the understanding that the most powerful shield you have against toxic people is your own inner stability. When you know who you are, what you value, and how you choose to show up in the world, no external negativity can easily pull you off course. Self-awareness is like an internal compass. It keeps you aligned even when the environment around you is chaotic. Calmness is the expression of that alignment. It is not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of emotion. It is a steadiness that arises from knowing your own depth, your own truth, and your own strength. To cultivate this inner anchor, you must first become observant of your internal reactions. Notice what triggers you, what unsettles you, what drains you, and what strengthens you. Pay attention to the shift in your breathing when someone speaks harshly. Notice the tightening in your chest when you feel misunderstood. Observe the urge to react when someone tries to provoke you. These signals are not weaknesses, they are messages. They help you understand where your emotional boundaries lie and what areas of your inner world require more grounding. When you approach yourself with curiosity instead of judgment, you gain power over your responses. Calmness grows when you practice presence. Toxic people thrive in environments of reactivity and emotional chaos. Their energy seeks an echo. But when you learn to stay present, to ground yourself in your breath, your posture, your awareness, you break the chain. You stop feeding their negativity with your own emotional responses. You begin to understand that your calmness is not just a feeling but a strategy. It is the space between stimulus and response where your clarity lives. In that space, you choose peace over provocation, intention over impulse, and strength over struggle. Anchoring yourself also means becoming emotionally self-sufficient. Many people unknowingly allow toxic individuals to control their mood because they rely on external validation, approval, or understanding. But when your sense of worth comes from within, you become untouchable. No insult can define you. No judgment can diminish you. No manipulation can confuse you. You operate from an inner fullness that does not depend on anyone's permission to feel whole. This inner stability makes you naturally resistant to toxic influence. Self-awareness also empowers you to identify what is yours and what isn't. You stop absorbing other people's anxiety, anger, or insecurity because you can clearly differentiate between their emotions and your own. You observe without merging. This separation is crucial. It prevents emotional entanglement and keeps your mind clear even in the presence of tension. You become like a deep-rooted tree. Winds may shake your branches, but your foundation remains unmoved. Over time, calmness becomes your resting state rather than an effortful practice. You start to respond to life from a place of grounded clarity rather than emotional friction. You carry yourself with quiet strength, not because the world around you has changed, but because you have. Toxic people lose their ability to influence you because their chaos cannot penetrate a mind anchored in awareness and a heart anchored in peace.